Good morning, Samfam. I'm Ria, face of Samaya. Special aspects of auditing in an automated environment, CA Final Syllabus. An automated environment is an ecosystem that combines people, process, and technology within a business environment. It's driven by computer-based systems, information, and information systems. We know that automated environment is something which auditing more efficiently and people and what does it consist of? It consists of people. It consists of some predetermined process that has to be followed by such people and technology through which they follow the process that were there. And while talking about technology more, technology is nothing but some applications through which they access the data that was there and or do the process that was defined by such people. So business applications are of three types. There's package software, small ERPs, and ERPs. Package software is mostly opted by micro and small enterprises which are not customized or not mostly tailor made. That was like Tally and QuickBooks. Small ERPs are for small and medium enterprises which have some not tailored one but have some specified or custom modules depending upon the area or industry that were working that they were in. ERPs were used by mostly medium and large enterprise which were tailor-made like SAP, ECC, Oracle, Business Suite, etc. An automated environment consists of the following layers. I think you could expect this as a direct question or an application-based question where you have to point out what are all those database. We go from micro to macro level. Database or operating system, application, networks, and physical and environmental physical and environmental. Database, if you think of a database, the PDF that you're reading right now, operating system is a Windows that was in the system, and application is the uh, software that I'm using to open the software that I'm using to open that PDF. That is like would be Adobe, Dropboard, etc. And network is the network through which we are connecting. LAN is used mostly in big corporates for private networks. WAN is the Wi-Fi that we normally use. VPN, virtual private network.
Physical and environmental is the keyboard or mouse or monitor or the camera that we are using right now. The next topic in automated environment is the real-time environment. The real-time environment is that it gets initiated, processed and recorded immediately like a GPA transactions. As soon as we initiate that splitwise bill 30 rupees to your friend and it gets immediately processed and reflected as credited to your friend account and then recorded in your books and his books.
So what are all the components, what are all the IT components that were used to make that real-time environment live? Is that application like GPay or Paytm or Beam UPI, etc. And middleware is a bank servers, and networks is a Wi-Fi or mobile data, and hardware is the mobile or the laptop that your mobile laptop tab that were you that through which you're accessing your applications. We have seen this real-time environment in individual point of view, but for the corporates, we are auditing corporates, right? For the corporates, it would be that GPay would be Oracle Business Suite or CBS, like for the banks and SAPs, etc. And middleware is the networks or source web servers like Oracle Fusion, IIS, Apache. What is mostly thing middleware is that in order to give you a brief point, it's like if you have various branches and wanted to know which product is out of stock or so that you could communicate with your supplier. It's like your supplier network and your retail branch network and your head office network to initiate the transaction have been connected. This is a middleware. Through how do you connect? It's again Wi-Fi, local area network and wide area networks. For the example that we have seen for the retail shops and suppliers, we use wide area networks. For the HO, like purchase department and accounts department, uh, we use private networks, local area networks. Hardware, obviously data centers, servers, storage devices, monitors, etc. Any failure in one component, applications, middleware, network, any failure in one component could render real time system unavailable. Obviously, right? We have so bring it back to a GPay transaction. Bank servers not there. Mobile data was not there, and again, you don't have mobile itself, and you do not have any kind of applications. The most real-time and environment and accessible through public domains and internet, hence vulnerable to network and cyber attacks. Why this point? This point is for the risks that there were like restrictions. The restriction so that if any component that was not there in the following components like application, middleware, and networks, real-time system is not available. That's a restriction that a real-time environment has, real-time system has. And what is the risk that real-time system has is that network and cyber attacks. This is the restriction, this is the risk, and how to overcome this hits here. Identify and resolve the issues and failures. You have to constantly monitor. This is what the remedial action is. Understanding and documenting the automated environment. The next chapter is, have you heard like similar things like in standards in 300 series, right? We have to understand and understand the understanding the business environment, including internal controls. SA 300 series. The auditor understanding the automated environment should include the applications that are being used, IT infrastructure, IT components, organization structure, policies, IT risks and controls. For these two are like macro, this is a gray area that IT risks and controls. Wherever there was an IT, there have to be a special consideration for the risks and controls that were being used. Mostly, you could see that in audit of banks, like uh, mostly. They were merely telling about the components, applications, infrastructure, organization, policies, and risks. So easy. And SA 230 is like documenting automated environment. How do you document? I think if you're in Big Four article, I need not stress more about documenting than you all know. Like real-time environment components, IT components, you have to, what are you have to document? It's the same thing like IT components. What are the applications that are used? What is the middleware they're using, and what are the networks, and what's the hardware they have? Considerations for automated environment. For any audit, there were three steps. That's planning, execution, and completion. That was same for all audits. So what's the special thing is that the steps were also the same, like risk assessment, that is 200 series, understand and evaluate 300 series, test for operating effectiveness is also like 200 testing and of operating effectiveness, it's nothing but the internal efficiency, internal controls efficiency. This is 700 series. And what's the risk assessment that we have to see in an automated environment is like what do they do, what do we see in 200 series? We see were there any audit risk from the financial statements or the audit reports of previous auditor, significant accounts and disclosures, and quantitative and qualitative considerations. All the key points in 200 series. We're going to soon discuss the 200 series. It's not about the direct question, it's about the applications questions. We have to know what are all the key points or what are the topics that would get used in this 200 series. When have to we mention that question? When have to mention that relevant points in 200 series in that particular question? We're going to soon discuss that. But before that, we just when financial statement assertion, these were the assertions that the management has been given. Identify the sources of misstatements. written representations from we could get that from written representations from the management or TCWG. And the risk of IT, wherever there was IT, you have to write like a risk. And for the second step, understanding and evaluation, you have to document the business process in flowchart, narratives, and risk control matrices. This is a single point, but in a different kind of way. Understand and design the process through walkthrough. This is a saying, they were saying the presentation portion here, and here they were saying the process that has to be followed. And here, entry level controls as segregation of duties is internal controls and general IT controls and application. We're gonna soon in this video go more detail about that. Testing of operating effectiveness, it's like whenever there was an internal controls testing, we need to have nature, timing, and extent, and source of reliability of the source data, and testing of report, sample testing, and competence of independence of staff, or uh, why such independence of staff was more is that the frauds that the staff does is easily identified than they were properly curated by management. They were very well designed so that it couldn't get that. We have to test the independence of the staff also. Reporting is a 700 series. You need to have the evaluate control deficiencies or its internal control deficiency, as we have been testing the internal controls all over here, and any significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, and these two were all internal controls and remedial. After we see uh, after we tell something that was risky or restrictions, like here, like this was a restriction and this is a risk, we immediately set the remedial action. Likewise, when we find out some deficiencies or weaknesses or any kind of risks that were there, we immediately say the remedial actions. And internal control memo manage or management letter, internal controls memorandum, and then auditor's report. The second thing is enterprise risk management. Due to dynamic environment, the associated risks have increased, and the companies have continuously managed the risk. Obviously, the main duty of CEO is to mitigate the risk and manage the risk of the business. And what are all the risks that we have to consider is this, technology and security. Why there was security and technology? Because of privacy, because of privacy concerns. Here, what they have said, network and cyber attacks, that was what security of data. Environmental risk is for the carbon footprints, environmental risk, the carbon footprints that were, and regulatory compliance. When there were regulators, we have to comply in something. So there was compliance risk also exists whenever there was a regulatory. Market risk, operational risk, financial risk, credit risk, etc. ERM is a formal program that is implemented across an enterprise for enabling risk management. Risk management is a combination of process, people, tools, and techniques. Have you heard these three before? It's an automated environment, is an ecosystem, combines people, process, and technology. Here, the same thing, but they were telling it as tools and techniques within the company to identify, assess, respond, mitigate, and monitor risk. Any risk that has to be identified. 4 to 200 series. Any risk that has to be identified, and we have to assess that. That means quantifying whether it's quantifying like more risk or not, and what do auditor has to do? Auditor has to respond. That is what meetings. Whenever we see, we have to what mitigate or put remedial actions. With remedial actions, we could mitigate that. And then for consistency, it's not a one-time deal. It's a continuous process. Business goes on continuous, and remedial actions also should be monitored. CRM is so risk management is a combination of process, people, tools, and techniques through which company it identify risk, assess risk, respond to risk, mitigate risk, and monitor risk. ERM is implemented by Board of Director TCWG or employees by way of board report, Internal control report. COSA ERM is most common for implementing suitable ERM. It's just an information who is going to implement that. When there is a responsibility, who has to implement that, right? Considerations for risk assessment process. Anything risk, whenever there's a risk assessment process, the risk stands in the first place. We have to prioritize the risk, and risk has to be identified. Identify the risk and indicators, like you have to assess what you have to assess, how you could assess. You could assess by risk indicators, risk appetite, risk scales and scores, and then assess the risk. With the use of that, it's a second step that has to be done. And how do you respond? You respond to the use of data and metrics and qualitative and quantitative factors, and then mitigate by benchmarking and key performance, and then monitor the risk. This is how you maintain or have to see the risk assessment process. First, you have in order to investor, if you're a portfolio manager, you have to identify first your investor's risk appetite, or how much A amount he wanted in T time. Likewise, define the business objectives and goals, and identify the events and achievements of business objectives. The same with the market trends, stock market trends, or the new instruments that have been introduced into the market, and assess the likelihood and impact. Like increase in interest rate would decrease return or might likewise. You have to assess such events and impact to our objectives or goals. And whenever, as we all said, was a key rule, whenever you find any restriction risk, you have to respond and then mitigate the risk, and then assess the residual risk, because after mitigating, you still left with some risk. It's like mitigating, not eradicating. Consideration while assessing the risk assessment. Entity level aspects of risk, like governance, organization, and management of IT. Risk in IT process and procedures have been followed. IT risk at each layer of automated environment. Have you come across this? If so, here it is. Understanding and documenting automated environment, organization policies, and IT risk. Right? The same way. Controls on to mitigate IT risk. How do you control to mitigate IT risk? Is that whenever there's IT, there's risk. Whenever there's a risk, have to respond and then mitigate that risk. How do you use that is general IT controls, application controls, IT dependent controls. General IT controls are also known as pervasive controls or indirect controls. General IT controls are policies and procedures that relate to many applications and support the effective functioning of application controls. They apply to mainframe, miniframe, and end user environment. General IT controls maintain integrity of information, security of data over pandas. What are the pandas? Program change, application system acquisition, development and maintenance, data centers and network operations, access security, system software acquisition and maintenance. Okay. In order to find a situation for the us to relate is that what are those who all could access the systems, and what are all the applications that they could access in an overall business environment. Application controls, they include both automated and manual controls that operate at a business process level. Automated application controls are embedded into IT applications and help in ensuring the completeness, accuracy, and integrity of data in those systems. IT dependent controls, they are manual controls which make use of data information report system from IT systems and application. Its design and effectiveness depends upon reliability of source data. In order to relate this IT internal general IT controls, we could think of our tally, like who could start a company in tally, and for the application controls, who could enter the entries into the tally, and IT dependent controls is the who could use the reports or data in order data into such tally. Entity level risks and controls. The controls that operate across the company, whenever any controls that operate across the company, they are pervasive controls. And at all levels, from board and top management to department and transaction level. ELCs are a part of internal control framework and relate to internal control components other than control activities. ELC system nature, so required application for more professional judgment. There are two types of ELCs entity level controls. First, operate at a higher level than the business activity like code of conduct or prospectus or memorandum, such as a business process, sub-business process, account level at a sufficient level to prevent, detect or correct in a timely manner. Direct ELCs operate at a higher level than business activity or transaction level, such as business process or sub-business process or account balance level or at sufficient level or at a sufficient level of precision to prevent or detect or correct a misstatement in a timely manner. Example like business process reviews, like we have seen in SCMP, right? If you remember that, balance scorecards, etc., and any kind monitoring of effectiveness of control activities in internal audit function. And indirect analysis do not relate to specific business process or transaction or account balance level, so cannot prevent, detect misstatements. They contribute indirectly to the operating effective operation of direct ELCs and other control. Direct ELCs operate at a higher level than business activities or transaction levels, such as business process or sub-business process, account balance level, or at a sufficient level of precision to prevent, detect, or correct a misstatement in a timely manner. Prevent, detect, correct a misstatement in a timely manner. Like business process reviews, in SCMP, if we see balance scorecards, business process reviews, etc., and monitoring and affecting control activities at internal by internal audit function. And indirect ELCs, they actually do not relate it to specific business process or transaction or account balance level, so they cannot prevent, detect, or correct a misstatement. They contribute indirectly to effective operation of direct ELCs, like code of conduct and HR policy, job roles, etc. And the next topic here is that whistleblower policy. So whistleblower policy comes into picture when there was any fraud that was happening in a company. Whistleblower policy through a small questionnaire, and the questionnaire is that we have to first point is that existence, whether the company had a whistleblower policy, yes or no. Is the company documented and approved, whether it was legally enforceable in order so it is documented and approved. Has a whistleblower policy been communicated to all employees? The uh, the main beauty of the whistleblower policy comes into existence when it is used by the employees of the organization. So in order to use the whistleblower policy, it has to be first communicated to all its employees, and all the employees should be aware and understand its purpose. It's not that okay, whistleblower policy is there, but how do you apply that? By knowing its purpose and its obligation towards the employees. Has the company taken measurements for training the employees to understand the contents and purpose of for this? Yeah, the employees were aware. If not, employees were there. And what are all the steps that were taken by company to make their employees understand? First thing, whistleblower policy there or not there? It is approved or not approved? Communicated, not communicated? Okay, do they know the purpose and obligations? Yes or no? Does company have taken any kind of training to its employees to make them understand the whistleblower policy? Does the company monitor After, whenever it's a remedial action, as we have discussed earlier, whenever there was a remedial action, we have to write about the monitoring the thing, since if you think fraud is a risk, whistleblower policy is a remedial action, and the company has to monitor the effectiveness. How does a company deal with any deviations and non-compliance? Whenever there were obligations, there might exist some non-compliance. How the company is dealing with such non-compliance. And now entity level risk, right? Now you're going to see the process level risks and control. As per SA 315, auditor has to understand the business process that makes, right? So try to not take gist of this PDF. This was already a gist of study material, and don't worry, no topic or no keyword has been omitted from study material. All the gist have been come, all the gist of study material had come into this PDF. We just why this PDF is that we have a very limited time before the exam. That's just that's just 1.5 day. That's just 1.5 day. We have to grasp as much quickly as possible. We have to grasp the material or revise or retrieve the things as fast as possible. So we have to be more, we don't have time for all the unnecessary things that doesn't matter in the examination. What is in the PDF is completely more than enough for your examination. You have to do question. You could take any question bank. A question bank is not necessary with some particular question banks and all. It's more retrieval process. For the retrieval process, I think Samaya would help further. I think Samaya would bring up with some new remedial actions, because ICA do not award you marks for the number of revisions you have done or number of hours you study. It only award you marks for your retrieval capacity, how much you have put your answer into the paper. So try to retrieve as much as possible. Know what have to be retrieved and what question. That is the main important point. You have to write correct relevant answer for your question in your examination. So you need to have a bit of practice for that question bank. You have to definitely do your question bank after watching the revision video. SA 315, auditor has to understand the business process that makes up account balance or financial statement line item. Process level risks and controls. As per SA 315, auditor has to understand the business process that makes up account balance or financial statement line item. What is a financial statement line item or account balance? Is the debtors, creditors, lands and buildings, travel expenditure, etc. The business process is a sequence of activities. As per 315, auditor has to understand the business process that makes up account balance. How do he know? Through walk through process. We have seen it here, right? Walk through. It might come in an MCQ. It's that. Account balance or financial statement line item. It's like debtors, land and building, that we know. A business process is a sequence of activities that takes place from initiation of transaction, recording, approving, posting, and reporting. For the real-time environment, we have seen a similar kind of series of events, like initiation, process, and record. Here, they are saying it in a bit different way, but mostly the same. Initiation, recording, approving, posting, and reporting. After initiation, you got recording. Why? Because that we have seen it in individual point of view. Here it's in mostly in a big corporates, you need reporting for everything. You need to have approval for everything. And then reporting. A business process is a typical A business process is typically made up of sub-process, a logical grouping of related activities. It's just a adjective on adjective. The auditor should document this understanding of company's business process and flow of transaction in audit file as per 230. 230 we have seen it somewhere, documenting data analytics. Data analytics will it's like analyzing the database. Database is a layer of automated environment which is an integral component of any kind of business. Data stored and processed can be used to get various insights. This data can be useful for preparation of MIS reports, high level of snapshot of business performance. Data stored and processed can be used to get various insights. Obviously, that's right. This data can be useful for preparation of MIS reports and electronic dashboards. MIS reports was like what we CS do mostly in industries after we get qualified. If you have been into any generating and preparing meaningful information from raw system data and using process tools and techniques. Have you heard this before? Automated environment, people, process, tools, and techniques. That's technology and tools are. We have seen the synonym tools and techniques. It's known as data analytics. Nothing but raw data you're converting into meaningful information through process and tools and techniques. Data analytics is an audit, also known as CAT, computer assisted auditing techniques. What are the components of aspects where what are the, and what are the areas that CAT could be used? A friend seeking, friend fraud, friend fraud risk assessment, evaluation of deficiencies, non-standard journal entries, control testing, and preliminary analytics. This could be a direct question. You have to memorize the way it is. We find a mnemonic here. It's something that was direct and it has of it. But always remember, you have to retrieve the correct information. You have to retrieve the correct information for your question. That's the main aspect. Fraud risk assessment. For risk assessment, evaluation of deficiencies, non-standard journal entries, control testing, preliminary active analytics. One more time. Fraud risk assessment, evaluation of deficiencies, non-standard journal entries, control testing, and preliminary analytics. And what's the audit approach to use the CATs? First, you have to understand the business environment, including IT 300 series. You have to define the objectives and criteria, identify source and format data, extract data, verify the completeness and accuracy of extracted data, apply criteria on data obtained, validate and confirm results, report and document results and conclusions. 230. 300 series, wherever we started, 300 series and 230. Here we have started with 300 series and ended with 230 documentation. Okay, how do you memorize this? Again, first you have to understand the business environment. 300 starting point and ending point will be the same, and you have to define the objectives and criteria. You have to, because you're discussing more about data, you have to identify the source and then the format of data, and you have to extract the data. Obviously that might be a raw data, right? You have to extract and verify the completeness and accuracy, and apply criteria is nothing but filters, mostly in order to sync it with our day-to-day life, is that applying filters to Excel data, and validate and confirm results, report and document. And here is a glossary that we could look it into. Just 2-3 days, 10 minutes a day could grab all this. And that's it for today, and that's it for the topic. And do not forget to do the question bank. It might be any question bank. You go and search it in Telegram. You get any any authors audit or any authors question bank, and you go and do that for an hour or so. That's it, enough. You don't you what the but concentrate mostly on retrieving. But concentrate mostly on retrieving. First, you have to read, retain, revise, and retrieve. That's the motto of your Samfam, to provide your feedback, extend our support to you all, and share it with your friends so it would aid their preparation.